It was a regular day at the grocery store, and for the young cashier it was just another busy afternoon. She was used to the rush of people filling the aisles, carts piled high with groceries as the line at her register grew longer and longer. The store was one of the busiest in the area, and despite the constant hum of activity, she always did her best to remain calm, friendly, and efficient. She had been working at the checkout for a few months now. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was steady work, and it helped her support her family. She'd gotten used to dealing with all sorts of customers, from the chatty regulars who came in every week to the rushed individuals who barely even looked at her as they handed over their payment. But there was something different about this afternoon. Maybe it was the quiet tiredness in the air or the way people seemed distracted. But today, she couldn't help but feel a bit more observant. Then, he came up to her register. The old man was different. He shuffled slowly to the counter, moving with the kind of slowness that comes with age. He was dressed in a worn old coat, one that had seen better days. His shoes, too, seemed to be barely holding together. His face was tired, his eyes hidden behind glasses that were perhaps a little too big for his face. There was no mistaking it. He was struggling. Not just physically, but maybe financially as well. She gave him a polite smile as he started placing a few items on the counter. Some bread, milk, a couple of vegetables, and a small packet of tea. The usual, it seemed. Nothing that would stand out. She scanned the items one by one, the beep of the register the only sound breaking the quiet. When it was time for him to pay, he hesitated. She noticed the way his hand fumbled in his pocket as if he were looking for something. She didn't want to draw attention to it, but she could tell he was searching for change. His eyes darted around nervously, as though he wasn't sure he could afford the groceries in front of him. The young woman's heart softened. She could feel the weight of the moment, knowing how hard it must be for him. And it wasn't lost on her that he probably didn't want to admit it. She'd seen it before. People who felt ashamed of needing help even in the smallest of ways. Without thinking, she reached into her own purse, pulling out the cash she had set aside for herself. The amount wasn't much, but it was enough to cover the difference between what he had and what he needed. "Don't worry about it," she said quietly, handing the cashier a bill to cover the rest. The man looked up at her, his eyes wide with surprise. He didn't immediately speak, and for a moment, there was only the soft rustling of paper bags being packed. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice quiet and shaky. The cashier nodded. "It's okay. I've got it." He hesitated again, his wrinkled hands clutching his grocery bag a little tighter as if unsure whether he should accept the offer. She could see the confusion in his face, the disbelief that someone might want to help him out of the blue, but eventually he nodded gratefully, giving a small, thankful smile. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. With that, he gathered his things and made his way out of the store, leaving the cashier standing there, still feeling the weight of the moment. She didn't expect anything in return. It wasn't about that. She had done it because it felt right, because no one should feel like they're alone when things get hard. Even in the smallest of ways, as he walked out of the store, the elderly man paused just outside the door, turning back one last time to look at the cashier. She was still at her register, ringing up another customer, unaware that she had just changed the course of both their lives. The elderly man left the store that day, his mind swirling with thoughts. He had been out for a simple errand, just a few groceries, and hadn't expected much from the day. But what had just happened? A stranger, a young cashier, had done something for him that no one had done in a long time. She had seen his struggle, recognized the weight of the moment, and without hesitation offered to cover the difference in his bill. It was such a small act in the grand scheme of things, but to him it meant so much more. He walked slowly, feeling the lightness of the moment mixed with the heaviness of his own life. He had spent most of his days in a world that required a mask, a facade of wealth, power, and control. As the CEO of a tech company, he was always on guard, surrounded by people who expected him to be perfect, polished, and ever confident. The truth, though, was that he wasn't any different from the next person. He had simply built a life around a mask that he no longer wanted to wear. For years, he had lived behind the scenes, never showing his true self. He preferred the anonymity of being just another face in the crowd, hiding his identity even from those closest to him. He wanted to see the world through the eyes of a regular person, not a CEO. He wanted to feel the pulse of everyday life, and that's why, whenever he could, He took on the guise of an ordinary elderly man. The simplicity of the role allowed him to experience life differently. He could blend in, watch the world, and make his own decisions without the pressure of his title. But that day, after the cashier's kindness, he realized something. The world hadn't forgotten how to be kind. There was still goodness out there, in places he had forgotten to look. The gesture was simple, but it was powerful. It had restored something in him, a sense of connection, a reminder of the values he had once held dear. It was so rare in his world to find such unselfishness, and the cashier had shown him just that. He didn't know why, but it felt important to return the favor somehow. Not in a way that would make her feel uncomfortable or overwhelmed, but in a way that could help her, as she had helped him, without ever asking for anything in return. He didn't want her to ever know his true identity, not yet. It wasn't about showing off his wealth or his power. He wanted her to know that kindness in its truest form was the thing that mattered the most. As he walked down the street, he thought about the possibilities. What could he do for her? He didn't want to simply give her money, as that might feel too transactional. He wanted to offer something that would change her life, something that would make her see the world differently the way she had changed his. The days went by, and the man spent his time reflecting on what had happened. He didn't want to overthink it, but it was hard not to. He knew that the kind act had touched him in a way that nothing had in years. It was a rare reminder that the smallest gestures could have the biggest impact. The cashier hadn't expected anything from him. She hadn't asked for anything. She had simply seen a person in need and without hesitation offered help. It was a simple yet powerful act of humanity, one that he could never forget. In his mind, he was already coming up with a plan. He didn't want to overwhelm her or make her feel indebted in any way. The idea of doing something to surprise her had become a bit of a personal mission. He wanted to help her, yes, but more than that, he wanted her to know that her actions mattered. A few weeks later, he returned to the store, but this time, he wasn't just an elderly man trying to blend in. He was determined to find the young cashier again, to make his offer. But when he walked into the store, he didn't immediately see her. He wandered down the aisles, taking his time, waiting for the right moment. It wasn't long before he spotted her at her register again. She was busy, as always, ringing up customers with the same smile, the same calm demeanor that he remembered. She hadn't changed at all. He watched her for a few moments, admiring the way she carried herself, how natural and at ease she seemed. There was something about her that made him think she deserved more than this job, more than the life she was currently living. He walked up to her counter, this time, not as a stranger, but as someone who had a purpose. He waited for her to finish with the customer she was helping. Then, when it was his turn, he placed a small basket of groceries on the counter. "Hello again," he said, his voice friendly but casual. She looked up and her eyes widened slightly as she recognized him. She smiled, though she seemed unsure at first. "Hello, sir," she said, scanning his items quickly. "Back again for a few more things?" He smiled back, his eyes twinkling with a secret she didn't yet understand. "Yes, just a few things," he replied, watching her closely. "How have you been?" "I'm good, just, working hard," she said with a shrug. "Busy as usual." He nodded, already knowing the challenges of her job. He had watched her for a few days now, seeing how tirelessly she worked. "I've been thinking," he said, his tone more serious now, "about what you did for me the other day, and I want to thank you properly." Her smile faltered a little, and she seemed to become more cautious. "Oh, there's no need. It was just a small thing. It's really no big deal." He shook his head, his smile warm but firm. "No, it was a big deal. To me, it was more than just a small thing. It meant a lot. I want to do something for you in return, but not in a way that feels out of place. I don't want you to think I'm trying to do something to make up for it. It's just that your kindness stood out, and I think you deserve something more." She blinked, unsure how to respond. It wasn't every day someone came into the store, let alone a stranger, offering something like this. She was used to customers being friendly, but never like this, never with this level of genuine care. She didn't want to seem rude or ungrateful, but she wasn't sure how to accept what he was offering. "Sir, I don't know how to accept," she said softly, the confusion evident in her voice. He smiled kindly. "I understand. I don't want you to feel pressured. Just know that I've been in a position where people often think that their actions are too small to matter. But they do. You made a difference, and now I want to help you make your own difference in this world." The young cashier was still processing the words of the elderly man, trying to make sense of what he had said. It was clear he wasn't offering money or a simple thank you gift. It was something bigger, more meaningful, but what exactly was he offering? She tried to smile, but there was a slight tension in her expression, a feeling that perhaps she wasn't ready for whatever it was he was about to do. The man, sensing her hesitation, leaned in a little, his voice soft but confident. "You've worked hard, and sometimes people like you don't get noticed as much as they should. But I noticed, and I want to offer you something that could change your life if you're open to it." Her heart began to race. She had no idea what he meant. She had only just met him a couple of weeks ago, and even though he seemed kind, something about the situation felt too good to be true. Could this really be happening? Was this some sort of prank? Or was he just one of those rich people who threw around money to make themselves feel better? Trying not to let her nervousness show, she spoke slowly. "I don't know what you mean, sir. I really appreciate your offer, but you don't have to do anything for me. It was just a small thing, and I'm happy to help when I can." He nodded, understanding her caution. "I know it's hard to accept help from others, especially when you don't expect anything in return. But hear me out. I've been in your shoes. I've worked hard too, and now I find myself in a position where I can help others. I'm not asking for anything in return, I'm just offering you an opportunity." She stayed silent for a moment, unsure how to respond. Was this some kind of test? Did he want something from her? But his eyes were kind, sincere even. He didn't seem like someone who would play games or make empty offers. And yet her mind raced with doubt. "I know this may sound crazy," he continued, "but I'm the CEO of a tech company. You probably don't recognize me, but I've spent most of my time behind the scenes. I'm not interested in fame or recognition. What I am interested in is helping people who still believe in the power of kindness." Her breath caught in her throat as the words sank in. A CEO? The CEO of a tech company? It didn't make sense. This was the man she had helped at the register, the man with the old coat and the worn shoes. She tried to process it, but it was too much to wrap her mind around. How could someone like him, someone who was so successful, care about her? The man smiled at her confusion, as if he had expected this reaction. "I'm not asking you to believe me right away," he said. "I understand that this is a lot to take in, but I want to offer you something. Not because I feel sorry for you, but because I see something in you. Your kindness, your willingness to help others without expecting anything in return. That's rare, and I want to reward that." She stared at him, still unsure what to say. Part of her wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all, but another part of her felt a strange pull, a curiosity about where this was going. Could he really be serious? Could a CEO, a powerful man, be offering her a chance at something bigger than her job at the grocery store? "You've been working hard here, but I know there's more for you out there," he said gently. "What if I told you that I could offer you a job? A real job? Not just a cashier position, but a chance to work with me directly? I've seen your potential. You don't have to stay stuck in a job you don't love. You could work with me, help me run my company, and make a real difference in the world." Her mind was spinning. A job with him? But she had no experience in tech, no business training, nothing that would qualify her for such a position. And yet he seemed so sure, so confident that she was capable. It felt like a dream, something out of reach, and she wasn't sure how to even begin processing it. "I don't have any experience in a job like that," she said softly, feeling the weight of her self-doubt. "I'm just a cashier. I don't know the first thing about running a business." He smiled again, this time with a hint of encouragement in his eyes. "That's the thing, isn't it? Experience is important, but attitude is everything. You've already shown me that you have what it takes to succeed. You've got a heart that cares. And I believe that's more valuable than any amount of experience. You're willing to learn, and that's what matters." She didn't know what to say. This was beyond anything she had ever imagined. Here she was, a young woman working a typical retail job, and now a CEO was telling her that he wanted her to join his company, to help him build something bigger than she could have ever dreamed. It was a lot to take in, a lot to process. "I don't want you to make any decisions right now," he added, his tone more reassuring. "I want you to think about it. Take some time. I know it's a big offer, and I want you to feel comfortable with it." She nodded, still stunned. She wasn't sure what to feel or how to respond. Her head was spinning with 1,000 questions, but she didn't have the words for them. All she knew was that her life had just changed in a way she never could have imagined. The elderly man continued. Take a few days to think it over. I'll give you my contact information, and when you're ready, we can talk more about how this would work. But remember, this isn't about money or power. It's about opportunity. It's about believing in yourself and knowing that you have the ability to do something greater. He handed her a business card with his name and number on it, but she still couldn't quite believe it. Was this really happening? Was this man really offering her a chance to change her life? Thank you, she said quietly, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and disbelief. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything yet, he replied with a smile. Just take your time. Think about what you want, and when you're ready, we can go from there. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in the bustling store, holding his business card in her hand, still processing what had just happened. It was too much to absorb all at once. She stared down at the card, feeling a strange mix of excitement and fear. What had just happened? What did this man see in her? And most importantly, what would she do next? The following days were a blur for the young cashier. The card the CEO had given her was still tucked in her pocket, but it felt heavy in her hand. Every time she reached for her purse, the card was there, like a reminder of the strange offer and the life she was living. She couldn't stop thinking about it. Should she call? Should she even consider such a huge change? It was overwhelming. Her routine at the grocery store had continued as usual. Customers came and went, and she greeted each one with the same polite smile, ringing up their groceries as if nothing had changed. But deep down, she knew something inside her had shifted. The offer the elderly man had made wasn't just a job offer. It was an invitation to leave behind everything she knew and step into the unknown. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how much she wanted to change. How much she yearned for something bigger, something that would challenge her and push her beyond her comfort zone. But it wasn't just about leaving the grocery store. It was about herself, about how she saw her potential. She had always been told that she could do anything, that she had a bright future ahead of her. But those words had always felt distant, like something other people said just to make her feel better. Now, for the first time, she wondered if those words could actually be true. What if this was the opportunity she had been waiting for all along? Still, doubt crept in. She wasn't qualified. She had no experience in the business world, no education in tech, no real knowledge of running a company. She had been raised to believe that success came from hard work and steady progress, but this felt like a leap, an enormous leap, into something she was unsure of. What if she failed? What if the CEO was just being kind out of pity, or worse? What if she wasn't cut out for this kind of world? Her mind raced with these thoughts, but in the quiet moments when she was alone, the offer seemed more and more appealing. The idea of working with someone who saw potential in her, who believed in her before she even believed in herself, felt both terrifying and exhilarating. It was a chance to prove to herself that she could be more than just a cashier, that she could be someone who made a real difference, not only in her life but in the lives of others. After several days of toying with the idea, she finally made a decision. She couldn't ignore this opportunity. Even though it was scary, even though she didn't know if she was ready, she knew deep down that she had to at least try. If she didn't, she would always wonder what might have been. With a deep breath, she pulled out the business card. Her hand trembled slightly as she dialed the number written on the back. She had no idea what to expect, but she was determined to at least take the first step. When the phone rang, she almost didn't want to pick it up, but it felt like it was too late to turn back now. The man answered on the second ring, his voice warm and familiar. Hello? It's me, she said, her voice quiet but steady. The cashier from the grocery store. You gave me your card. Yes. I was hoping you'd call. I'm glad you did. His tone was encouraging, and it made her feel a little more at ease. I've been thinking about what you said, she continued, and I'd like to meet if that's okay. I'm interested in what you offered. Of course, he replied, his voice calm. I'll have my assistant set up a meeting for us. How about tomorrow morning? We can meet at my office and I can answer any questions you might have. Her heart raced, but she nodded as though he could see her. Yes, that works. Great, he said. I'll see you tomorrow then. I'm looking forward to it. The call ended and she sat there for a moment, the weight of the decision finally hitting her. She was actually going to do this. She was going to meet the CEO, and possibly, her life was about to change in ways she couldn't yet understand. The next morning, she woke up early, too anxious to sleep much longer. She dressed carefully, wanting to make a good impression but not knowing exactly what was expected. She wasn't used to dressing up for meetings. She had always kept things simple, casual, but today she put on the nicest clothes she owned, hoping they would be enough. She spent a little extra time getting ready, fixing her hair and trying to make herself look as polished as she could. When she arrived at the building, she was surprised by how grand it looked. The lobby was sleek and modern, with tall glass windows that let in the morning light. She felt out of place as she stepped inside, her sneakers squeaking against the shiny floor. She walked up to the receptionist, who gave her a friendly smile. "Hi, I have an appointment with Mr. Weston," she said, her voice slightly shaky. The receptionist nodded and gestured for her to have a seat. "He's expecting you. Please make yourself comfortable. He'll be with you shortly." As she sat down, she looked around, taking in the polished furniture and the clean lines of the room. It was nothing like the grocery store she worked at. The atmosphere here was completely different. It felt like she was stepping into a world that was far beyond anything she had ever known, and the nerves she had felt earlier now intensified. She felt small in this space, like she didn't belong, but she reminded herself that she was here for a reason. She had made this choice, and it was up to her to follow through. After what felt like an eternity, the receptionist finally told her that Mr. Weston was ready to see her. She stood up, her legs a little shaky, and followed the receptionist to an elevator that took her up to the top floor. The door to his office opened, and there he was, the man who had offered her a life-changing opportunity. He stood up from behind a sleek desk, his smile warm as he greeted her. "Welcome," he said, extending his hand. "I'm glad you came. Please have a seat." She took a seat across from him, still unsure of what to say. He sat down, watching her carefully. "I'm glad you called," he began. "I know this is a big decision, and I want to make sure you have all the information you need. You don't have to commit to anything right away, but I want you to feel confident in your decision." She nodded, still feeling a little overwhelmed by everything. "I don't really know where to start. This is all so new to me." "That's okay," he said. "That's why I'm here. I want to help you understand what this job would look like and what I believe you could bring to the table. It's not about your resume or your background. It's about who you are and what you're capable of. I see potential in you, and I believe you can do great things." She felt a sense of calm wash over her as he spoke. His words were sincere, and for the first time she felt like someone truly believed in her. She wasn't just a cashier. She could be something more. The conversation continued, with Mr. Weston explaining the details of the job and what her role would entail. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was exactly the kind of challenge she had been craving. She could see now that he wasn't just offering her a job. He was offering her a chance to change her life. By the time they finished talking, she was ready. Ready to take the leap, ready to make a change, and ready to start a new chapter in her life. The days that followed were a whirlwind. After that first meeting in the sleek, towering office building, the young woman found herself plunged into a world she had only ever dreamed of. The decision to accept the offer had been difficult, but as soon as she stepped into her new role, she knew it had been the right choice. She had no formal business training, no experience in the tech industry, but what she had was something far more valuable: determination, a willingness to learn, and the kind of passion that could turn a simple job into something life-changing. Her first few weeks at the tech company were a mix of excitement and nerves. She felt like an imposter at times, walking through the hallways, seeing the high-powered executives and hearing the fast-paced conversations about cutting-edge innovations. Everyone seemed so confident, so sure of themselves. It was intimidating, but she reminded herself that she was here for a reason. The CEO, the man who had seen something in her that she hadn't yet recognized in herself, had given her this chance. He believed in her, and that belief was something she could carry with her every day. Her new job wasn't easy. She wasn't just a secretary or an assistant. She was involved in meetings, strategy sessions, and brainstorming discussions that challenged her thinking and pushed her to grow. She spent countless hours learning, asking questions, and soaking up every bit of knowledge she could. At times, she felt overwhelmed by the technical jargon and complex problems being discussed, but she didn't give up. She kept reminding herself that every step forward, no matter how small, was progress. The CEO, who had started as a mentor and guide, soon became someone she looked up to in ways she hadn't expected. His leadership wasn't just about being the boss. It was about inspiring others to do their best, to push the limits of what they thought was possible. He made her feel like she was part of something bigger than herself. He didn't treat her like an outsider. He treated her like a valuable part of the team, someone who had something important to contribute, and contribute she did. As the weeks went on, she found her voice in meetings, offering ideas and solutions that surprised even her. She began to realize that the self-doubt she had carried with her all her life had no place in this new world. She had more to offer than she had ever given herself credit for, but there were still moments of uncertainty. The imposter syndrome never quite went away, even as she gained more confidence. She often found herself comparing her achievements to those of the more seasoned professionals around her. At times, she felt like an outsider in a world that wasn't made for people like her. She wasn't from a wealthy family. She didn't have the best education, and she had never imagined she would be working in such a prestigious company. But every day she reminded herself of the kindness that had started it all, the moment when she had helped a stranger in need, not expecting anything in return. That kindness had set everything in motion. One day, as she sat at her desk, reviewing a proposal for a new product launch, she received a message from the CEO. It was a simple note. Just a few words, "Let's have lunch today. I want to discuss your progress." Her heart skipped a beat. The idea of meeting him for lunch felt different now. She wasn't just a new employee anymore. She was someone who had made an impact, someone who had earned the right to sit at the table with the leaders of the company. She wasn't sure what the lunch would be about, but she was eager to find out. When she arrived at the small cafe in the building, the CEO was already there, waiting. He greeted her with a warm smile and gestured for her to sit down. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his tone casual but sincere. "I'm good, just trying to keep up with everything," she replied, feeling a little nervous but trying to hide it. "There's so much to learn, but I'm enjoying it." "I can tell," he said with a nod. "You've been doing great work. I've seen you step up in meetings, and your contributions are making a difference." Her chest swelled with pride at his words. "Thank you. I've been trying my best." He smiled, his expression thoughtful. "That's all I ever ask. But I wanted to talk to you about something else. You've been here for a while now, and I think it's time to think about your next steps." She frowned slightly, unsure what he meant. "Next steps?" "Yes," he said. "I've been impressed with your progress, and I think you're ready for a bigger challenge. I'm offering you a new role, one that will give you more responsibility and more opportunities to lead. You've shown me that you have the potential, and now I want to give you the chance to prove it." She stared at him, stunned. She hadn't expected this. She had just started getting comfortable in her current role, and now he was offering her even more. "I don't know if I'm ready for something like that," she said, her voice a little shaky. "I've only been here a few months." He leaned forward, his eyes kind. "You're ready. I wouldn't offer you this if I didn't think you could handle it. The work you've done so far has shown me that you have the skills, the drive, and the heart to do more. It's not about being perfect, it's about taking risks and growing. And I believe you can grow even more in this new role." For a moment, she didn't know what to say. This was bigger than anything she had ever imagined. She had come from a small grocery store, a job that was steady but unremarkable. And now here she was, sitting across from the CEO of a major company, being offered a leadership role. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "You don't have to say anything right now," he said. "But I want you to know that this is your moment. You've earned it. Take some time to think it over, but I'm confident you're the right person for the job." That afternoon, she walked back to her desk with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. Was this really happening? Could she actually be ready for a role like that? She didn't know, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't the same person who had walked into that grocery store months ago. She had grown, she had changed, and she had learned that the limits she had once believed were nothing more than barriers she had built herself. She spent the next few days thinking about the offer. The decision wasn't easy. There were still doubts, still fears that she wasn't good enough, that she wasn't ready. But as the days passed, she realized something. The only way she would grow, the only way she would truly see what she was capable of, was by stepping into the unknown, by taking risks. In the end, she made her decision. She was going to accept the role. She wasn't going to let fear hold her back. She was ready for the next chapter, ready to prove to herself that she was capable of greatness. The next time she met with the CEO, she walked into his office with a sense of determination. She sat down, looked him in the eye, and said, "I'm ready." He smiled, his eyes full of pride. "I knew you would be." The young woman's decision to take on the new role was just the beginning of a journey that would take her to places she had never imagined. As the days went by, she found herself adjusting to the responsibilities of her new position, which were more challenging than she could have anticipated. It wasn't just about managing projects or overseeing teams. It was about leading others, making tough decisions, and facing obstacles she hadn't expected. It was a test, a constant push to be better, and she wasn't always sure she was up to the challenge. In the early days of her new role, she felt a pressure that weighed heavily on her. The stakes were higher now. The CEO had placed his trust in her, and she didn't want to let him down. Every decision felt monumental, every task like it carried the weight of the company's future. The tech industry was fast-moving and competitive, and she was surrounded by people who had years of experience, people who had been in the game much longer than she had. She often found herself second-guessing her choices, unsure whether she was doing enough or making the right calls. But she didn't have much time to dwell on those doubts. Every day there was something new to tackle. She started leading meetings, presenting ideas, and managing teams. It was overwhelming at times, but there was a part of her that felt exhilarated. She was finally putting her ideas into action, shaping projects, and making a real impact on the company's direction. She wasn't alone in this journey. The CEO, who had seen something in her from the start, continued to offer his guidance and support. He didn't hover over her, but he made it clear that he was always there when she needed him. He trusted her judgment and believed in her abilities, and that made all the difference. His belief in her gave her the confidence to push through the tough moments, to rise to the challenge, and to keep moving forward even when things got difficult. There were times when she stumbled. She made mistakes, missed deadlines, and faced criticism from colleagues, but each time she learned from it. She refused to let setbacks define her. Instead, she used them as stepping stones to become better, stronger, and more capable. She realized that success wasn't about being perfect. It was about persevering, learning from failures, and continuing to improve. One of the biggest challenges she faced was the pressure to prove herself. There were moments when she felt like she had to work twice as hard as everyone else to earn her place. She was often the youngest in the room, and sometimes it felt like people didn't take her seriously, but she refused to let that stop her. She knew she had the skills, the knowledge, and the determination to succeed, and she was going to prove it, no matter what. As the months passed, she began to find her rhythm. She grew more confident in her role, more comfortable in the meetings, and more capable in managing her teams. She started to see the fruits of her labor as projects she had worked on came to fruition. The company was growing, and her contributions were starting to be recognized. She wasn't just a part of the team anymore. She was becoming a leader in her own right. But even as she grew in her role, she never forgot where she had started. She never forgot the kindness that had been shown to her all those months ago, when a simple act of generosity had set everything in motion. She remembered how it had felt to be unsure, to be scared of taking a leap into the unknown, and she wanted to make sure that she could be that same kind of person for others. The opportunity to give back came sooner than she expected. One afternoon, she was in the middle of a meeting when one of the junior employees, a young woman who had just started at the company, spoke up with an idea that caught her attention. The idea was bold, a little unconventional, but there was something about it that made her stop and think. The young woman was clearly nervous, but there was a spark in her eyes, a willingness to take risks that reminded her of herself when she first started. After the meeting, she pulled the young woman aside.
"I like your idea," she said.
"It's different, and it's something we haven't tried before. I think it has potential. Let's work on it together." The young woman's face lit up with surprise. "You really think so?" "I do," she replied with a smile. "You've got the right attitude. Don't be afraid to take risks and push boundaries. That's how we grow." That moment reminded her of the power of encouragement. She had been given the same chance, the same belief in her, and now it was her turn to pass it on. She wanted to be the kind of leader who inspired others to reach their full potential, who believed in them even when they didn't believe in themselves. It wasn't long before she became a mentor to several of the younger employees. She took them under her wing, offering advice, guidance, and support whenever they needed it. She shared her experiences, both the successes and the failures, and helped them navigate the challenges that came with working in the fast-paced world of tech. She wanted them to know that they didn't have to be perfect to succeed, that it was okay to make mistakes, as long as they learned from them and kept moving forward. As time went on, she became more and more involved in the strategic decisions of the company. She was no longer just an employee. She was a leader, someone whose ideas were shaping the future of the company. The CEO, who had once been her mentor, now looked to her for input and trusted her to make key decisions. It was a role she had never imagined for herself, but it was one she had earned through hard work, perseverance, and a willingness to take risks. One afternoon, the CEO called her into his office for a private meeting. She walked in, her heart beating a little faster than usual. She had no idea what the meeting was about, but she knew it was important. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. He looked serious, but there was a warmth in his eyes that made her feel at ease. "I've been thinking about your journey here," he began. "When I first met you, you were working at that grocery store, unsure of what your future held. You've come a long way since then. I've watched you grow into an incredible leader, someone who has made a real impact on this company." She listened quietly, feeling a swell of pride in her chest. His words meant more to her than he could know. "I want you to know," he continued, "that I'm proud of you, and I believe you're ready for the next step. It's time for you to take on even more responsibility. I'm offering you the position of Chief Operating Officer." Her breath caught in her throat. The position of CEO, it was a huge responsibility, a leadership role that she had never imagined for herself. But she could see it now, the journey she had taken, the person she had become. She had worked hard for this moment, and she was ready to take the next step. "I accept," she said, her voice steady. "I'm ready," he smiled, a look of approval in his eyes. "I knew you would be. I'm excited to see what you'll do next." As she left his office that day, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. From that first meeting when she had been unsure of herself, to this moment where she was taking on one of the highest positions in the company. She had grown not just as a professional, but as a person. She had learned that success wasn't just about the destination. It was about the journey, the lessons learned, and the people who helped along the way. Her journey had started with a simple act of kindness, and now she was in a position to make a difference for others, just as someone had once done for her. The future was uncertain, but she was no longer afraid of what it might hold. She was ready for whatever came next, because she knew that she had the strength, the heart, and the vision to succeed.